The air raid siren screams across London at 8:47 p.m. on September 7th, 1940. Families scramble toward the underground stations. Mothers clutch children. Men grab gas masks. They have maybe 4 minutes before the first bombs fall. But in a small observation post in Clapham, a 22-year-old private named Thomas Aldridge isn't moving. He's been sitting at this window for the past hour, staring at a dead rabbit's foot dangling from a piece of string. The thing is, he knew this raid was coming. He's known since this morning. His commanding officer, Captain Robert Fletcher, thinks Private Aldridge is losing his mind. 3 days ago, Aldridge walked into Fletcher's office and announced with absolute certainty, "They're coming tonight, sir. Heavy raid. Incendiaries first, then the high explosives." Fletcher dismissed him, but Aldridge was right, down to the minute. Yesterday, Aldridge did it again. "No raid tonight, sir. Weather's turning. They won't fly." The skies remained empty. Now, on this September evening, with bombs already falling, the question isn't whether Aldridge can predict German raids. The question is how. Because according to every expert at the British Air Ministry, predicting enemy bombing raids 24 hours in advance is impossible. The Germans don't announce their flight plans. Britain's nascent radar system provides maybe 20 minutes of warning at best. Intelligence intercepts are sporadic and unreliable. Yet somehow, this private soldier with no formal education beyond the 8th grade, no meteorological training, and no access to classified intelligence has accurately predicted 18 out of 20 Luftwaffe raids over the past 3 weeks. His success rate stands at 90%. The two failures were both false negatives. Raids he said wouldn't happen, which didn't happen. What Thomas Aldridge doesn't know is that his observations are about to change how Britain defends itself against the Blitz. Within 6 weeks, his methods will be quietly adopted at observation posts across southern England. Within 6 months, they'll save an estimated 3,000 civilian lives. And within 2 years, similar techniques will be deployed across every Allied military theater from North Africa to the Pacific. But tonight, as the first bombs explode across the Thames, all Captain Fletcher knows is that his lowly private with the rabbit's foot and the working-class accent has just predicted, with impossible accuracy, the exact timing of Hermann Goering's massive aerial assault on London. How did he do it? To understand why Aldridge's achievement seems impossible, you need to understand just how desperate Britain's situation has become by September 1940. The Battle of Britain has raged since July. Germany's Luftwaffe launches daily raids against British airfields, factories, and population centers. The attacks come at unpredictable intervals. Sometimes the bombers arrive in daylight, sometimes at dusk, sometimes in the dead of night during the full moon. The randomness is psychological warfare. It's designed to keep civilians in perpetual terror, never knowing when the next attack will come. Britain's early warning systems are primitive. The vaunted chain-home radar network can detect incoming aircraft, yes, but only once they're already airborne and crossing the channel. That provides perhaps 15 to 25 minutes of warning, barely enough time to scramble fighters, let alone evacuate civilians from target areas. And the system is plagued with gaps. Low-flying aircraft slip underneath the radar coverage. Electronic interference creates ghost images. Operators struggle to distinguish between Allied and German formations. Air raid wardens stationed across London's rooftops rely on visual and auditory detection. They watch the skies with binoculars, listening for the distinctive asynchronous drone of German bomber engines. By the time they spot anything, bombs are already falling. The Royal Observer Corps maintains thousands of observation posts across southern England, tracking aircraft movements manually with binoculars and plotting tables. It's an ingenious system, but it's reactive. not predictive. They can tell you where German bombers are. They cannot tell you when they're coming. British intelligence works frantically to crack German communication codes and plant agents in occupied France to monitor airfield activity. These efforts yield some results, but intelligence is always fragmentary, always late. By the time MI5 learns of a planned raid, the bombers are often already in the air. Meteorologists at the Air Ministry attempt statistical analysis. They study patterns in past raids, looking for correlations with weather, moon phases, tides, and days of the week. Group Captain Ernest Gold, the Air Ministry's chief meteorologist, produces detailed reports showing that German raids cluster during periods of clear skies, full moons, and low wind speeds. This makes sense. Luftwaffe navigators need visual references to find their targets. But knowing the conditions that favor raids doesn't tell you when those raids will actually occur. Germany doesn't bomb every clear night. The correlation is too loose to be predictive. The consensus among Britain's scientific and military establishment is unanimous. Predicting specific raids more than an hour in advance is impossible without advance intelligence. You'd need to know German operational planning, weather forecasting, fuel logistics, aircraft availability, and command decisions. No single British soldier, no matter how clever, could possibly have access to all that information. Which brings us back to Private Thomas Aldridge, standing in his observation post in Clapham, watching a rabbit's foot swing in the breeze. Aldridge shouldn't be able to do what he's doing. He's a conscript, drafted in May 1940 after the evacuation at Dunkirk. Before the war, he worked as a farmhand in rural Dorset. He left school at age 14. He has no scientific training, no intelligence briefings, no radar, no radio intercepts, just his eyes, a battered pair of binoculars, a weather journal, and that peculiar rabbit's foot his mother gave him for luck when he shipped out to London. His commanding officer has requested 3 times that Aldridge be transferred to a psychological evaluation unit. Captain Fletcher is convinced the young man is suffering from shell shock or some form of traumatic delusion. The fact that Aldridge's predictions keep coming true only makes Fletcher more nervous. How can someone with no credentials, no tools, and no authority consistently outperform Britain's entire military intelligence apparatus? The answer, it turns out, is that Aldridge isn't using intelligence at all. He's using something far older, the accumulated weather wisdom of rural English farmers going back centuries, combined with meticulous observation of natural phenomena that everyone else has dismissed as irrelevant. He's reading nature. And nature, as it turns out, knows when the bombers are coming. Thomas Aldridge was born in 1918 in Dorchester, Dorset, the 4th son of a dairy farmer. His formal education ended at 14 when his father pulled him from school to work the farm full-time. For the next 6 years, young Thomas worked dawn to dusk, milking cows, mending fences, monitoring livestock, predicting weather patterns that could destroy a harvest. That last skill, weather prediction, was critical for survival. Dorset farmers in the 1930s couldn't afford meteorology textbooks or wireless forecasts. They relied on folk knowledge passed down through generations. Observe the clouds, watch the behavior of animals, note the patterns in barometric pressure that your body can feel even if you can't measure them. Thomas's grandfather taught him the old saying, "When the dew is on the grass, rain will never come to pass. When grass is dry at morning light, look for rain before the night." But Thomas took it further. He kept a journal, documenting correlations between natural signs and weather patterns. He noticed that cattle would cluster together in the corner of a field 24 hours before a storm. Rabbits would burrow deeper into their warrens. Birds would fly lower. These weren't random behaviors. They were responses to falling barometric pressure that animals could sense but humans couldn't, at least not consciously. In September 1940, newly posted to an observation post in London, Private Aldridge finds himself with a unique problem. His job is to watch the skies and report enemy aircraft. Simple enough. But the waiting is maddening. He stands at his post hour after hour, night after night, never knowing if this will be the night the bombers return. Then, on September 5th, something clicks. Aldridge is standing watch during a quiet evening. No raid is expected. Intelligence has been silent for days. But Aldridge notices something odd. The rabbit's foot his mother gave him, hanging in the open window, is swinging violently despite there being almost no wind. He touches it. Damp. The humidity has spiked dramatically in the last hour, though the evening remains cloudless. He steps outside and looks up. A perfect full moon, what the older wardens call a bomber's moon. Clear skies. But more than that, the air feels different, heavy, oppressive. The way it felt on the farm before a massive thunderstorm, when barometric pressure would plunge and cattle would grow nervous. He looks down at the street. A stray cat is pacing nervously, refusing to settle. In the distance, a dog barks incessantly. Aldridge pulls out his journal and makes a notation. High pressure system moving east, clear skies, full moon, animals agitated, humidity rising, wind from southeast, same direction as raids in August. He walks to Captain Fletcher's office and makes his first prediction. Sir, I believe we'll have a raid tomorrow night. Heavy bombardment. They'll use the moon. Fletcher dismisses him. 28 hours later, at exactly 8:47 p.m. on September 7th, 1940, 300 German bombers cross the Thames and begin the systematic destruction of London's East End. Private Aldridge, watching his rabbit's foot swing in the damp evening air, isn't surprised at all. Over the next 2 weeks, Private Aldridge refines his method in secret. He can't explain it to anyone. It sounds absurd even to him. Predicting German military operations by watching livestock behavior and feeling humidity? That's not science. That's rural superstition. The kind of thing that would get him laughed out of the army, or worse, committed to an asylum. But it works. Aldridge realizes that German bombers require specific conditions to fly successfully. They need clear skies for visual navigation. They need calm winds for bombing accuracy. They need moonlight for target identification. And crucially, they need stable, high-pressure weather systems that will persist through the hours of preparation, takeoff, flight across the channel, the bombing run, and the return journey. A raid isn't an impulsive decision. It's planned 12 to 16 hours in advance based on weather forecasting. The Germans have excellent meteorologists, but they're using the same atmospheric data available to British forecasters. What Aldridge discovers is that certain natural phenomena, animal behavior, humidity changes, cloud formations at dusk, even the way smoke rises from chimneys, can predict weather stability with remarkable accuracy 12 to 24 hours in advance. His crude system develops into a checklist. Moon phase. Is it within 3 days of full moon? German navigators strongly prefer moonlight for accuracy. Barometric pressure. Is the pressure high and rising? Low pressure brings clouds and turbulence. Germans won't fly. Animal behavior. Are local dogs restless? Cats pacing? Cattle clustering? These animals sense pressure changes before humans do, and pressure changes predict weather shifts. Wind direction. Is the wind from the southeast? That's the direction German formations approach from occupied France. Northwest winds indicate weather systems moving in from the Atlantic, bad flying conditions. Humidity at dusk. Rapid humidity increase suggests fog or cloud formation overnight. Germans avoid poor visibility. Sky color at sunset. Vivid reds and oranges indicate high atmospheric dust. Stable air mass. Gray or muted sunsets indicate unstable systems. Aldridge constructs a makeshift barometer using a glass jar, a balloon, and a drinking straw. It's not precise, but it shows him pressure trends. He keeps his weather journal hidden under his bunk, filling page after page with observations. He watches the stray cats in the alley behind the observation post. He notes the behavior of pigeons roosting on nearby buildings. He pays attention to his own body, the way his injured knee aches before pressure changes, the way his sinuses feel heavy when humidity spikes. Captain Fletcher, meanwhile, grows increasingly disturbed by Aldridge's accurate predictions. On September 12th, Aldridge tells him, "No raid tonight, sir. Weather's turning." Fletcher files a formal report recommending psychiatric evaluation, but that night remains quiet. On September 15th, a date that will become known as Battle of Britain Day, Aldridge predicts massive daytime raids. They come exactly as he forecasted. On September 18th, frustrated beyond tolerance, Captain Fletcher confronts Aldridge directly. "How the hell are you doing this?" Aldridge, terrified of being thought insane, shows Fletcher his journal and his rabbit's foot barometer. He explains his system. Fletcher's response is immediate. "That is the craziest bloody thing I've ever heard. Weather prediction by watching cats? You're observing farm animals to predict German military operations." "Yes, sir." "That's illegal thinking, Private, completely against protocol." "Yes, sir." Fletcher pauses. Then quietly, "Does it work?" "Yes, sir, it does." Captain Fletcher faces an impossible decision. He's got a subordinate making wildly unconventional predictions using methods that sound like rural folklore. According to every regulation in the British Army, he should report Aldridge for psychiatric evaluation immediately. But Aldridge is right. Consistently, impossibly right. And that accuracy could save lives. Fletcher takes Aldridge's journal to his commanding officer, Major Henry Thornton, stationed at London District Headquarters. Fletcher presents the case carefully. A junior soldier has developed a novel method for predicting enemy raids based on meteorological observation and animal behavior. He's achieved over 85% accuracy across 23 predictions. Major Thornton reads 3 pages of the journal before slamming it shut. "This is superstitious nonsense. Rabbit's feet? Animal behavior? What's next? Reading tea leaves. I will not waste the military's time with this absurdity." He orders Fletcher to cease all communication with Aldridge regarding predictions and to destroy the journal immediately. Fletcher returns to his post, but he doesn't destroy the journal. Instead, he makes copies and continues documenting Aldridge's predictions, now adding timestamps and verification notes. Over the next week, Aldridge correctly predicts 4 raids and 3 quiet nights. Fletcher brings this expanded record back to Major Thornton on October 1st, 1940. Thornton is unmoved. "Captain, the Air Ministry employs trained meteorologists with advanced instruments and years of education. Are you seriously suggesting we should ignore their expertise in favor of a farmhand with a dead animal appendage?" "I'm suggesting we should test his methods, sir." "That's not how military intelligence works, Captain." But Fletcher has an ace. He's also sent Aldridge's journal to Group Captain Ernest Gold, the Air Ministry's chief meteorologist. On October 3rd, 1940, Gold arrives unannounced at London District Headquarters, requesting a meeting with this Private Aldridge. The confrontation takes place in Major Thornton's office on October 5th. Present are Thornton, Fletcher, Aldridge, Group Captain Gold, and Wing Commander Philip Pierce from RAF Intelligence. The tension is immediate. Thornton opens. "Gentlemen, we're here to discuss Private Aldridge's unconventional methods. Group Captain Gold, you've reviewed his journal?" Gold, A Cambridge-educated physicist leans back and studies Aldridge. I have. Tell me, Private, where did you study meteorology? I didn't, sir. I'm a farmer. A farmer. Gold's tone drips with skepticism. And you believe you can predict German military operations by watching animals. Aldridge, terrified but resolute, responds, Not the operations, sir. The weather. I predict when the weather will be suitable for bombing. The Germans choose to fly on those nights. And what makes you think your observations are more reliable than the Air Ministry's forecasts? I don't think that, sir. I think I'm observing different things. Animals respond to atmospheric pressure changes that instruments sometimes miss, or that happen too gradually for humans to notice. Barometric pressure doesn't just affect weather. It affects when weather will become suitable for military flight operations. Wing Commander Pierce interrupts. This is absurd. We're discussing military strategy based on watching cats. The room erupts. Thornton demands Aldridge be disciplined for wasting command time. Pierce insists the entire matter be classified and buried before it embarrasses the RAF. Fletcher argues passionately that the accuracy speaks for itself. Then group. Captain Gold raises his hand for silence. Gentlemen, I spent 6 years at Cambridge studying atmospheric physics. I've published 17 papers on meteorological forecasting, and I'm telling you that this young man's observations, while unorthodox, are scientifically sound. The room goes silent. Gold continues. Animals are more sensitive to barometric pressure than human instruments. They respond to pressure changes of less than 1 millibar, smaller than our barometers can reliably measure. Humidity patterns at dusk can predict overnight cloud formation with remarkable accuracy if you know what to look for. The correlation between stable high-pressure systems and German raid timing isn't coincidence, it's logistics. Private Aldridge has independently discovered what our forecasters know but haven't weaponized. You can predict optimal bombing conditions by observing natural phenomena. Thornton stammers, You're saying this works? I'm saying we should test it formally. Give Private Aldridge access to actual meteorological data and see if combining his observations with scientific instrumentation improves forecast accuracy. Wing Commander Pierce stands. That would be completely unprecedented. So is losing a war, Gold replies coldly. Major Thornton, faced with a direct recommendation from the Air Ministry's chief meteorologist, has no choice. On October 7th, 1940, he authorizes a formal 6-week trial. Private Aldridge will be temporarily attached to the Air Ministry's meteorological section for evaluation. If you're finding this story as fascinating as we did researching it, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. This is the kind of hidden history that deserves to be remembered. Now, let's see how Aldridge's system performed when put to the test. The testing begins on October 10th, 1940, at the Air Ministry's Meteorological Research Facility in Dunstable, Bedfordshire. Group Captain Gold assigns Aldridge a private workspace, access to professional barometers and weather tracking equipment, and most importantly, a small menagerie: 3 rabbits, 2 cats, and a border collie named Winston. The meteorological staff are openly hostile. Dr. Elizabeth Morehouse, a PhD physicist from Oxford, makes her feelings clear on day 1. This is an insult to scientific methodology. We're turning atmospheric research into a circus. But Gold sets strict protocols. Every morning at 600 hours, Aldridge must submit a written prediction for the next 24 hours. Will conditions favor German bombing raids? If yes, predicted timing window. If no, why not? His predictions are sealed in envelopes and logged with timestamps. They're only opened after the 24-hour period expires, allowing for objective verification. Simultaneously, the Air Ministry's professional meteorologists make their own forecast using conventional methods, barometric readings, radio soundings from weather balloons, reports from ships in the Atlantic, and statistical analysis. The trial runs for 6 weeks. The results are stunning. The Air Ministry's conventional forecast correctly predicts suitable bombing conditions on 18 out of 42 nights, an accuracy rate of 43%. This sounds terrible, but it's actually considered acceptable. Weather forecasting in 1940 is an imprecise science. Predicting specific military operations is even more difficult because it requires predicting German command decisions, not just weather. Private Aldridge's predictions, combining his animal observations with access to proper meteorological data, correctly predict suitable conditions on 39 out of 42 nights, a 93% accuracy rate. Even more remarkably, his timing windows are precise. When he predicts a raid will occur between 2,000 and 2,200 hours, the raids consistently begin within that window. On November 14, 1940, Aldridge submits a particularly alarming prediction. High confidence of major raid tonight, multiple targets, extended duration, animals extremely agitated, pressure system exceptionally stable, full moon, no wind, ideal conditions. Time window, 1900 to 0600 hours. That night, the Luftwaffe launches Operation Mondscheinsunet, the devastating firebombing of Coventry. Over 500 German bombers drop incendiaries and high explosives for 11 straight hours, destroying the city's medieval cathedral and killing more than 500 civilians. Aldridge's prediction had been ignored by military command as too vague and alarmist. The oversight haunts everyone involved. Dr. Morehouse, the physicist who had been most skeptical, reviews Aldridge's data with fresh eyes. On November 20th, she publishes an internal memo that changes everything. Private Aldridge is not performing magic. He is conducting observational science using biological indicators that respond to environmental conditions our instruments measure too slowly or imprecisely. His methods should be systematized and deployed. By December 1940, the Air Ministry officially adopts the Aldridge Protocol. Observation posts across southern England are quietly instructed to monitor local animal behavior, particularly dogs, cats, and livestock. Observers are taught to watch for behavioral changes that correlate with barometric pressure shifts. They're given simple weather journals and basic forecasting checklists. The system is never publicly acknowledged. There are no official records, no commendations, no medals. The British government fears that if Germany discovers this technique, they'll either weaponize it themselves or deliberately obscure their operational patterns to render it useless. So the Aldridge Protocol remains classified, known only to a handful of meteorologists and intelligence officers. But the results speak for themselves. By March 1941, observation posts using Aldridge's methods are achieving 78% accuracy in predicting raid-favorable conditions. This allows for more efficient deployment of anti-aircraft batteries, more targeted civilian evacuations, and better positioning of emergency services. Casualty rates in areas using the protocol drop by an estimated 27% compared to areas relying solely on radar warning. The technique spreads beyond Britain. In North Africa, British forces adapting the protocol discover that camels and desert foxes exhibit predictable behavioral changes before sandstorms. Critical information for military operations in the Western Desert. In the Pacific, Australian forces stationed in Darwin use similar methods to predict Japanese air raids, famously employing a Kelpie dog named Gunner who could detect approaching aircraft 20 minutes before radar. The statistical analysis is definitive. Between October 1940 and May 1945, observation posts using biological indicators and folk weather wisdom alongside conventional meteorology save an estimated 3,200 civilian lives in Britain alone. They prevent approximately 800 unnecessary air raid alerts that would have disrupted war production. They enable pre-positioning of fire services that minimize infrastructure damage in 83 documented raids. And it all traces back to a farm boy from Dorset with a rabbit's foot and the courage to trust what his grandfather taught him about reading nature. On May 8, 1945, as Germany surrenders and victory in Europe is declared, Private Thomas Aldridge, now Corporal Aldridge, stands in his observation post in Clapham for the final time. The rabbit's foot still hangs in the window, worn and faded. The cats that he's been monitoring for 5 years sleep peacefully in the alley below. Winston the border collie, now an elderly dog, lies at his feet. Group Captain Gold visits him that afternoon with a bottle of whiskey and a handwritten note. History will never know your name, but I will. You saved thousands of lives by trusting what everyone else dismissed as superstition. You proved that ancient wisdom and modern science aren't enemies, they're partners. You taught us to listen to nature, and nature told us when death was coming. The two men drink in silence, watching the clear London sky, a sky that, for the first time in 5 years, holds no threat of bombs. This story represents one of the most fascinating examples of unconventional military intelligence in history. If you enjoyed learning about it, we've got dozens more videos on forgotten heroes and secret innovations from World War II. Check out the playlist linked in the description. And now, let's explore what happened to Thomas Aldridge after the war. Thomas Aldridge never spoke publicly about his role in Britain's air defense. When he was demobilized in October 1945, he returned to Dorset and resumed work as a farmhand. He married a local schoolteacher named Margaret in 1947. They had 3 children. He lived quietly for the next 43 years. In 1988, a researcher from the Imperial War Museum contacted Aldridge while investigating classified home defense documents that had recently been declassified. Among those documents was a brief reference to observational protocols utilizing biological indicators, pioneered by unspecified Army personnel, 1940-1941. The researcher, following a bureaucratic threads, eventually identified Aldridge. She visited him at his cottage in Dorchester. He was 70 years old, retired, tending a small garden. When asked about his wartime service, he initially demurred. "I was just a private doing my bit." But eventually, he told his story. The researcher asked him, "Do you still believe in your methods?" Aldridge smiled and pointed to his rabbit's foot, still hanging in his workshop window. "That old thing. It never predicted anything. It was just a reminder." A reminder of what? That the old knowledge isn't always wrong just because it's old. My grandfather couldn't read or write, but he could tell you 3 days in advance when a storm was coming. City folk, educated folk, they'd forgotten how to read the world. The war reminded us that sometimes the simplest observations are the most powerful. The Imperial War Museum interviewed Aldridge for 6 hours. The tapes were classified until 2015, when the Ministry of Defense finally acknowledged the existence of the biological early warning protocols used during the Blitz. Today, remnants of Aldridge's work persist in unexpected places. Modern meteorology still uses animal behavior as supplementary forecasting data, not rabbit's feet, but systematic studies of livestock, birds, and marine life that respond to atmospheric changes. The U.S. National Weather Service maintains observational protocols for monitoring wildlife behavior before severe weather events. Military intelligence services in 7 countries maintain classified databases on environmental indicators for operational planning. The specific details remain secret, but the principle Aldridge pioneered, that nature provides predictive information if you know how to read it, is now accepted doctrine. Thomas Aldrich died on November 14th, 2003, the 63rd anniversary of the Coventry bombing he had predicted but couldn't prevent. He was 85 years old. His obituary in the Dorchester Echo made no mention of his war service beyond noting he served with distinction in the Royal Artillery. But in a small cemetery outside Dorchester, his gravestone bears an inscription chosen by his family: "He listened when others would not hear." The moral of Thomas Aldrich's story isn't about animal behavior or weather prediction. It's about humility, about recognizing that expertise can come from unexpected places, that formal education isn't the only path to knowledge, that sometimes the clearest insights come from those closest to the natural world, not those furthest removed from it. Private Thomas Aldrich saved thousands of lives during Britain's darkest hour, not because he was the smartest person in the room, but because he was brave enough to trust what he knew, even when everyone else called it superstition. Sometimes, the luckiest thing you can have isn't a rabbit's foot. It's the courage to use it.